All right. Going
All
on,
right,
Dave?
yeah, what's going on? Yeah, we're talking about pensions today, I guess. I know not everyone is lucky to have one. Those are not as popular as they used to be, but if you are someone that does have a pension, what's the first thing that you need to think about?
First of all, yeah, to your point, I think you should be pleased. You should be excited, because a pension is a potential for a lifetime income, whether it's for you and a spouse, or, a lot of pensions offer lump sums, but it's definitely an earned benefit. Folks that work generally at big companies or municipalities like schools or hospitals, those are the folks who are watching this with earnest, saying, what do I do about my pension? So first of all, congrats, you have one. It's a great, great benefit. Um, but we have to make some decisions here. So as people are nearing retirement, they have this list of pension options. And if you're not aware of that list, you probably should go look for it. Call your benefits folks and say, hey, I need a list of my pension options. Um, and then really to kind of just begin to evaluate what is best. And we're going to get into this here in terms of, well, how do you decide what is best? The joke always is that if we knew how long you were going to live, this would be a much, much easier decision. Uh, but without that knowledge, we kind of need to think through, what do these different options mean? How will they affect you? And what are your other variables in your equation that might color your decision?
Yeah, and on that paperwork you mentioned, once you do receive it, there's likely going to be some numbers on there, some estimates for what your benefit might be at a certain age, whether you retire at 62 or 65. There may be some benefit in deferring, just like Social Security. There's also going to be some language on there like, 50% joint and survivor, single life annuity, or even a lump sum option. So most likely, we see anywhere between, 5 and 10 different things that you can select, and it can be a bit of a overwhelm, I think, to know exactly what path to take. So, from a high level, what's kind of if you want to maybe start with the single life option and then maybe go to the 50%, 65%, and then into I guess we can kind of break it down like that and eventually end at the lump sum. So, usually the highest benefit is the single life, and why is that?
It's based on the worker's life only. In other words, you get the biggest income per month per year by choosing single life, because when you die, that income stops. As a comparison, if there's an option that is a 50% joint and survivor option, uh, if the worker who the benefit is assigned to, if they pass away first and their spouse lives on, the spouse gets to receive a continued benefit, in that case, a 50% benefit. But that trade-off means that while they're both alive, they're getting a little bit less income than they would had they chosen the single life, because the odds of one of you living longer than just one of you would suggest that you're going to take less money. So in reality, it's like accepting a life insurance policy, or you're paying for a life insurance policy out of your pension income, because when you die, then there's a benefit, a death benefit that goes to your spouse. So you willingly take less income in order to provide a continuation of income to your spouse should you die first. And that leads to all of the other possible variants, which could be a two-thirds survivor benefit, or a 75% survivor benefit. And I don't know if you remember, Dave, but years and years ago, we worked with a couple that had 22
Ugh.
pension
Yeah.
options.
Oh man.
And it was almost comical. And they're like, which one do we pick? And so even if you have 22 options, it usually is best to start with, let's compare the 100% um, single life annuity option, 50% survivor option, joint and survivor option, or any variance there. Really, that is the crux of the decision. First of all, do we want to care for a spouse, or do we need to care for a spouse after our death? If so, then that might lead us down to that branch of the decision tree. If you're a single person, then the decision might look like, do I take the single life annuity option or the lump sum. So let's talk about the lump sum for a minute too.
Yeah, so behind these pension options, there's actuaries and people crunching numbers and trying to figure out what is the sweet spot for offering you the benefit, making sure the pension stays healthy, the investments are all okay. But in most pensions, we see what they call a lump sum option. So as Adam mentioned, there's the single life, the joint and survivor, and then the lump sum, and that might be instead of getting X amount of dollars per month, they would just, in exchange for that, give you a lump sum. So, probably if it's a decent sized pension, a few $100,000 is very common. And that's something you can roll over tax free to an IRA, and you can manage it from there. So, what are the, I guess, pros and cons of going down that path?
Yeah, as you're talking, I'm reminded of the lottery. Yeah,
Yeah, right.
people are fairly aware that when you win the lottery, you can take the lump sum or you can take the income. And that's really what we're talking about here. But in this case, it's an earned lottery. In other words, you've earned this benefit by working there a long time, usually. So the lump sum is fascinating because if you want, you can roll the lump sum into your own IRA, which is an individual retirement account, as opposed to it staying in this group pension benefit. You can replicate the annuity income by investing it either in an annuity or simply taking the same amount of money out every month or every year. So you can build your own pension-like income using the lump sum, but you control the lump sum. I mean, in theory, you could take the lump sum and you could go buy a Lamborghini with it or an
Mm.
RV. Those are options that you have. And we'll get into like the tax consequences of these things in a minute, but the lump sum can work well for someone that has adequate income sources. Maybe they have enough Social Security between them and their spouse and some investment income or rental income that they really don't need the pension income to meet their basic lifestyle expenses. So by rolling it into an IRA in the lump sum form, they can have that available to them so that when they want to take a big trip or they want to buy a more pricey item, they can just tap into that lump sum when they need it rather than turning it into an income that is an irrevocable for life income decision. So it really comes down to the best way to evaluate the lump sum is to look at your other assets, look at your other income sources and your overall planning objectives. But the lump sum, of course, psychologically is cool because then you just feel wealthier
Mhm.
because you just added a couple 100,000 to your net worth, to your balance sheet. The reality of it is when you choose the income, you still can do a present value of that future lifetime income and calculate that into your net worth. It just doesn't feel the same. A lump sum feels different than income.
Yeah, no, emotionally that is great. I think in most cases the default on these pension options is the 50% joint survivor. So I know I've seen on some paperwork that if someone is going to choose the lump sum option, or even the single life, the spouse, if married, needs to sign off on that and have a notary sign that
Yeah.
because they want to make sure that the surviving spouse knows that if the owner of the pension passes away and they chose the lump sum and that lump sum has been spent, there's no additional benefit. So really, you have to make these decisions very carefully, and it's not something you can do kind of, behind someone's back. So I wanted to mention that. And to your point with the lump sum, while you do have control, you have to be careful, because that pension was going to be there for the rest of your life, or maybe even the rest of your spouse's life. And so just because that number emotionally feels better, you kind of have to be more strategic on how you spend that and when you spend that.
Sure. Yeah, and how you invest it. So
Yeah.
if you have the discipline to not spend it all or you don't need to spend it all, then you're into, well, how do we invest that lump sum if we take it? You could put it into cryptocurrency if you wanted to,
Mm.
or you could put it into a diversified portfolio of stocks and bonds, or you could put it into one of any number of annuities to provide income or protection or guarantees. You can put it into CDs. In other words, the whole world of investment options opens up when you or if you choose that lump sum option. So there's that layer of decision making to consider when you're taking the lump sum. We've had some folks, as you're aware, Dave, that maybe they're really close to paying off the mortgage, or they've got a debt or two that they really want to extinguish before they retire or when they retire. So they might take the lump sum and then just carve off part of it, pay off some debt, which frees up the cash flow that would have been used to service that debt to reduce the amount that they need in retirement. So that can be a strategy as well. But that leads us into the tax consequences of pension decisions. Because if you take a lump sum and you take all the money out at one time, all of that money gets added on to your other income and is taxed because it's never been taxed before.
Yeah, and that could be a shock to the system. You know, if you're used to
Right.
getting a bit of a refund or not owing too much, and you add a couple $100,000 onto your income for that year, be prepared to have a big tax bill. So something that you certainly want to be aware of. And you know, on the other side of that is that if you choose the joint and survivor or the stream of income, you know, that's also going to be, you know, a taxable income stream in retirement. And so, you know, if you had that locked in, and you maybe there's a year where you don't need all of that income, well, then you're paying more tax than you might need. So that may be another argument for taking the lump sum in case there's a year where maybe you're spending a little bit less, or as you get into retirement, you're slowing down and not spending as much. So you could kind of turn the dial down on how much income you're receiving. And we've seen that play out well. And I think what it really comes down to is, you know, are you trying to maximize your income, or are you trying to maximize your lifetime estate? And so I don't know if you can talk a little bit about that as well, and maybe where people could kind of what's the fork in the road there?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great point. I was thinking the same thing. If somebody's approaching retirement and they're going to be right there, meaning they have just enough income and assets to retire in the way they want, they might need to maximize their income. And that might mean they take the pension income option because they need the income. They can't just set the lump sum aside and just say, well, we can just hold that for later because they need all the income they can get. So the income options might be really the only choice they have. And it's worth pointing out too that the pension plan is made up of many people, many participants. And so there's kind of like a group pricing.
Mhm.
So you might be getting more income from the pension income than you could get if you took a lump sum and went out and bought your own annuity, because you're buying an annuity based on a single life versus a group dynamic. So
Yeah.
if you're needing all the income you can get to retire, it might make sense to take the income option. If, by contrast, you don't need all the income and you would enjoy some more flexibility, some more optionality, the lump sum might be the best route to take there. But from that tax perspective, we've seen folks where they think they need this much income to retire. And then over time, as they age, they naturally start to spend less. They're less active. They go from the go-go years to the slow-go years to the no-go years. And if they don't need all that income, they're still being taxed on it. Whereas had they had it in a lump sum, it would have been tax deferred in their IRA and they wouldn't have to take as much money out until age 73 or in the future 75 when required minimum distributions start. There's a whole other tax dynamic. So again, the longer we talk about this, the more nuances we bring to the discussion. But it really does come down to first fork in the road decision wise. Are we trying to maximize our retirement income because we need it or want it? Or if we don't need it or want it, are we more comfortable having a larger estate, meaning having a larger balance sheet by having that lump sum available to us and or available to pass on to beneficiaries, loved ones, if we don't need it all?
Yeah, and that can be very appealing. Again, if that resonates with somebody, and you know, over the course of a 30 plus year retirement, you're not sure exactly how that money is going to be used, but having another avenue to have a flexible spending, whether that is for enjoyment or long-term care or even for the next generation. That's pretty cool. One thing I did want to kind of revisit was, you mentioned, essentially you're buying a life insurance policy. So there's like if you pick the single life, it's going to be higher, but if it's the 50% joint survivor, there's that difference, and you're kind of weighing that in. Something I've heard over the years is like I call it pension maximization. And I know that's kind of more of an advanced strategy and may not be as prevalent as it used to be. But I guess if someone is listening and has heard that word before, what could you kind of give us a high level what that strategy looks like?
Yeah, pension maximization is effectively buying your own life insurance policy with some of the money that you would have given up had you taken a joint and survivor option. So said a different way, let's say somebody is going to get $1,000 a month from the single life annuity option versus $750 per month if they chose the 50% joint and survivor option. They're taking less willingly, knowing they want to provide a benefit for their spouse should they die first. Well, that sounds a lot like life insurance.
Hmm.
So what you could do is if you still have good health and you're fairly young and the numbers work out with the insurance company, you could take the $1,000 a month single life annuity option, and with the $250 per month you would have given up by taking that survivor option, you could buy your own life insurance policy. And so the math would have to work where that $250 per month buys you enough of the right kind of life insurance to replace the pension to your spouse if you die first. In other words, if you die first, the pension ends because you chose a single life option,
Right.
but the death benefit from the life insurance goes to your spouse, and then they can use that lump sum to buy their own income or to, if they don't need the income, to have that as part of their estate. If the math works, it's really cool because here's the downside of any of these more traditional pension options. What happens if both of you die young?
Mm.
That's an awful scenario. But if you die young, then a lot of money was left on the table that you would have earned from pension income had you lived to life expectancy, normal life expectancy, or beyond. So in that scenario, if you did the pension maximization, bought the life insurance, and tragedy occurs and you both die young, the death benefit from the life insurance goes to your stated beneficiaries, your loved ones. And that means that pension was able to benefit the next generation.
Mm.
So nuanced. It's not
Yeah.
simple, but we've done it, and when it works, it's really cool. But you have to be committed to paying those life insurance premiums with the money that you were going to give up anyway from the pension. And it's tempting in year 7, 10, 15 to be like, where did this money come from? Why are we doing this? But
Yeah.
it's a really interesting planning strategy.
Yeah, not for anybody, and it seems like you're really threading the needle there, but something that should be considered. I mean, if you're saying someone has 22 options, why not throw that one on the table too, just to see if it makes sense? And again, there's the factor of health and longevity, and but it's a big decision, I guess, and that's something that you don't want to not think about. One other thing that comes up a lot with pensions is like the health of the pension, the company. So if this is a private pension, you've worked at this company you know, are there stories or what's the concern there if the pension isn't healthy, or is it going to be there for my retirement?
Yeah. When people work at a company a long time, they know a lot about the company, or they sometimes think they know a lot about
Yeah.
the internal workings. Some pension plans are considered underfunded, meaning the pensions in the investments in the pension plans themselves have underperformed the promises made by the people that manage the pension. And so there's a risk that at some point in the future, the pension people get together and say, we don't have enough money to pay all the
Yeah.
obligations because people are living longer than we thought, and or we overpromised on the benefit side, or we've underperformed on the investment side. So there is a risk that the pension can become insolvent. And that means that the person that said, hey, I want lifetime income may be in a tough spot if that pension is in trouble. So that's a consideration. And yeah, what we've seen is there are some folks that it doesn't take much of a rumor for them
Hmm.
to decide, I don't want any part of that potential in my future. I'm just going to take the lump sum and figure it out on my own rather than take the risk that this company is going to default on its pension obligations. And then you add into it back in 2007, 8, 9, when we had that the huge recession. Um, Airline pilots were, it was a very big news story where their pension went very underfunded and they had
Hmm.
to reduce benefits significantly for those who were promised the biggest benefits, the pilots. And so the pension guarantee fund that's basically like the FDIC for banks, but the pension guarantee fund had to step in and make good on what they could on those pensions. And a lot of those pilots lost a big chunk of their pension. So that can happen. Does it happen often? No. Could it happen to you? Sure. You could get struck by lightning, anything can happen. But that fear, whether rational or irrational, can lead people to simply take the lump sum and manage it on their own. So at least they have that bird in the hand.
Yeah, I could see that scenario where if there is concern, you like forget about the math. I don't, it's like don't even
Right,
worry about it.
right.
Even if the pension stays solvent the rest of my life, at least I have more control or perceived control of that lump sum. So man, there's just so many different rabbit holes here in this world, and I think it's pretty clear that being able to evaluate this amidst all of the other moving pieces and parts of retirement when you throw in Social Security or Medicare or all these facets. And then if you are married and you have a spouse, like what's their retirement? Maybe they have a pension, maybe they don't have a pension. And so I think that
What are your health
care.
issues?
Oh, that's true. Very
Yeah.
true. And you want to make sure that because these decisions are irrevocable, you get one crack at it. So, we want to make sure that you measure twice or three or four times and cut once,
Right.
in this decision. So is there anything else that comes to mind, Adam, as we kind of wrap up this discussion? Anything that you wanted to mention?
I'll just reiterate what you said. I mean, because there are so many variables, so many nuances, it really is a personal choice. And that does lead me to we've heard some folks that will do whatever their coworkers say they should do. In other words, we're going to take this option because that's what everybody does. That might be a good choice. It might be short-sighted. My advice would be to talk with someone who's worked in these sorts of areas before, an advisor. That's something that we do for folks as part of our retirement planning process because it is so nuanced. We really want to consider all the angles, all the elements. And sometimes we can't see the forest for the trees. In other words, we're too close to the situation to really evaluate it. So one of the things that we do is just ask a lot of questions. What do you want to have happen? Who do you want to care for? What are your beliefs? What are your concerns, your hopes, your dreams, your fears? All those things are factors. So again, it behooves you to really sit down and do some comprehensive planning so that you can feel good about your pension decision and all of the other planning decisions. But it's really it's a planning discussion that you really should have to give it the time that it's worth because it's a big deal. And you can say, oh, it's only $600 a month. Yeah, but if you live 30 years, do the math. Six times 12 is $7,200 times 30 years. That's $200,000 plus interest. That's a big number where I come from. So it pays to sit down with somebody and just do the planning that's necessary, take the time, and just make as best decision as you can.
That's great. All right. Well, I enjoyed the conversation and look forward to the next topic when we chat again.
All right. Thanks, man.